Christmas Eve used to mean everything in our house. Twinkling lights wrapped around the porch, the smell of cinnamon rolls drifting from the oven, the sound of Bing Crosby humming from the old radio, and my wife, Caroline, curled up next to me on the couch with a cup of peppermint hot chocolate, pretending Die Hard was a Christmas movie. But not this year. This year, Caroline was on a business trip in Chicago. Some last-minute client meeting that, conveniently, her phone couldn't seem to survive without losing signal every other hour. She promised she'd fly back in time for Christmas dinner. So I waited. Alone. I kept the lights on. I cooked the turkey. I even placed a single gift under the tree for her, handwritten note inside and all. A part of me still wanted to believe it was just work, that I was overthinking, that the nausea twisting in my stomach wasn't suspicion, but leftover eggnog. She walked through the door at 9:48 p.m. No apology. No hug. No kiss. Just a tired smile and, sorry, the flight was delayed. You know how it is. Except I didn't know how it was. She wore the same dress she'd posted on Instagram 2 nights ago, captioned Boardroom Slay. But I recognized the faint smudge of lipstick on the collar, and it wasn't her shade. I didn't say anything. Not yet. I poured her wine. I smiled. I asked about her meeting. She lied through her teeth, looking right into my eyes. And in that moment, something inside me went completely still. I wasn't going to confront her. Not now. Not like this. Because if she wanted to play games, I was going to play smarter. And I already had a plan forming in the back of my mind. One she'd never see coming. Caroline fell asleep within minutes of dinner. She claimed jet lag, and I didn't question it. She retreated upstairs, leaving half a glass of wine on the table, and I just sat there, staring at her plate. The untouched cranberry sauce, the bite of stuffing still clinging to her fork, and the silence. Our house had never felt so quiet. The lights still twinkled. The fireplace still crackled. But the woman upstairs? That wasn't the same Caroline I married 6 years ago. It wasn't even the same Caroline I kissed goodbye 3 days earlier. I leaned back in my chair, watching the flames dance. A voice inside me whispered that I was being paranoid, that maybe she really had just been working. But the rational part of me, the part that had been slowly piecing things together over the last 6 months, it knew better. This wasn't the first red flag. Back in September, she started working late. October brought mysterious girls' nights. November was full of client dinners that she never wanted to talk about. But December? December gave me Christmas. And with it, an opportunity. Because the best part about Caroline thinking I was clueless was that she had no idea I'd already begun watching her slip. And I wasn't alone in this anymore. 2 weeks earlier, I confided in my oldest friend, Evan. We'd known each other since the 3rd grade, and he'd seen enough failed marriages to spot the signs before I even admitted them aloud. I showed him the texts, the new password she set on her phone, the receipt I found for 2 glasses of champagne at a hotel bar. On a night, she told me she was with coworkers. Evan didn't say much, just looked at me, nodded, and said, "If you want to hit back, you can't do it angry. You do it smart." And he was right. So, while Caroline thought she was stepping ahead of me, I had already started the process. Quietly, methodically, I bought a second phone, installed software. The next day, I'd be making a very special visit to someone who could help me gather the evidence I needed. A private investigator. Discreet. Licensed. Expensive, but worth every penny if it meant I could walk away from this mess with dignity and with the truth on paper. But tonight, I sat there, alone, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't even going to confront her unless it served my purpose. Because Caroline didn't realize it yet, but she'd already lost. She just hadn't seen the scoreboard. Yet, Caroline slept in late on Christmas morning. No surprise there. She never was a morning person, especially after flying. Or at least that was her excuse. I made coffee like I always did, even added the cinnamon she loved. I placed her mug beside the little box under the tree. The only gift I got her this year. Inside was a silver necklace, nothing flashy. Just a tiny heart charm engraved with the words, "Truth finds its way." I wanted to see her reaction when she opened it. But she didn't. She walked right past it with a half-hearted, "Merry Christmas, babe," and went to check her phone in the kitchen. That phone, always glued to her hand, always tilted just slightly away from my line of sight. I watched from the living room as she smiled at something on the screen. Then she typed quickly, paused, deleted something, typed again. I didn't need to see the words. I didn't need proof in that moment. Because I already had the gift she didn't realize she'd given me. Time. Time to think. Time to plan. Time to gather more. 3 nights ago, Evan helped me install a tiny device inside her car. It recorded audio and GPS legal in our state if one party consents. And guess who that was? Me. I hadn't listened to the files yet. I wanted to wait until I could handle whatever I might hear. But Christmas morning gave me all the clarity I needed. After she left the room, I grabbed my laptop, connected the recorder, and loaded the last file from her trip. The date was December 23rd. The audio started with traffic noise. Then her voice. "You really think he suspects anything?" A man's voice answered. Low. Confident. "Nah. Matt's too busy playing husband of the year. Let him cook the turkey while you get dessert here." Laughter. Her laughter. Soft, smug. Then silence. Then something I wish I could unhear. Moans. Kisses. Skin on skin. I closed the laptop. My jaw clenched so tight I thought I might snap my own teeth. But still, I didn't rage. I didn't storm upstairs. I didn't throw the necklace at her. I breathed. This was more than just proof. This was leverage. And it was going to become the first brick in a wall that would eventually close around her. But I needed more. The next step? Call my lawyer. And loop in my mother. Because if there's one person in the world more dangerous than a betrayed husband, it's his furious mama with receipts. I called my mom the day after Christmas. I didn't want to ruin her holiday, but she always said, "Don't protect people who hurt you, especially not with silence." She picked up on the second ring. "Matt? You all right, honey?" I didn't answer right away. My voice was tight. My hands were cold, even though I was standing by the heater. Then I said it. "She's cheating, Mom." There was a long pause on the line. I could hear her breath catch. Then the sharp inhale, the kind that told me she'd known something was off for a while, but hoped she was wrong. "How do you know?" I told her everything. The late nights. The receipts. The audio. I didn't spare details, and she didn't flinch. By the end of it, I could hear the steel in her voice. "That selfish little snake," she hissed. "You give me 1 week, Maddie. 1 week, and I'll help you build a case that'll leave her wishing she never met this family." My mom used to work as an accountant for a divorce attorney. She knew how to track spending, spot hidden accounts, and prepare paperwork that bled people dry in court. But more importantly, she loved me, and she hated lies. By the end of that call, she already had a list of documents she needed. Bank statements, credit card reports, shared investment info, and copies of the prenup, which Caroline once called romance insurance. Caroline had no idea what was coming. That same day, I met Evan in a diner across town. We sat in a booth by the window, the kind with worn leather seats and chipped mugs full of coffee. "You sure you're ready for this?" he asked. I nodded. "Then we do this right," he said. "No yelling. No drama. Just receipts, reputation, and revenge." He slid a flash drive across the table. She was texting him from the airport, by the way. GPS pinged the same hotel twice in 3 days. Her colleague drives a black Lexus. "Got a plate number. Want photos?" I didn't even look at the drive. I want everything. We were building a case, brick by brick. And each one made me feel stronger. Not bitter. Not broken. Prepared. Because Caroline took my love for granted. She thought quiet meant weak. But all it really meant was that I was giving her enough rope to hang herself. And soon, the noose would tighten, with a smile on my face and a legal team on standby. By the time New Year's Eve rolled around, I was wearing a mask. Not a literal one, but the kind you build over time when you're surrounded by lies and decide to weaponize your silence. Caroline was radiant that night. Red dress. Hair curled just the way I used to like it. She leaned in at the party we were hosting, kissed my cheek in front of our friends, and whispered, "Thank you for being so understanding lately. I really needed that trip." I smiled. I even kissed her back. Because when you're planning a silent war, you don't throw punches. You let your opponent walk into their own trap smiling. I had already transferred half our shared savings into a secure legal account, as advised by the attorney my mom connected me with. Our prenup had clauses around adultery, clear and brutal. All I needed was undeniable proof and a formal confrontation witnessed by counsel. And that's exactly what I was lining up. Evan had gone full private eye mode. He'd tracked the business associate to a company named Vernal Tech, a mid-sized firm that did consulting for Caroline's employer. The guy's name? Patrick Larson. Divorced. Smug. Rich. And, according to the photos Evan collected, extremely comfortable putting his hands all over someone else's wife. There was a particularly damning picture taken just 2 days before Christmas. Caroline, in a robe, leaning against the balcony of a hotel suite. Patrick, shirtless behind her. That one photo, worth more than gold in court. Still, I kept it close. I wanted the reveal to be final. Devastating. Like the last scene of a courtroom drama where the villain suddenly realizes they've been played the entire time. My mom had already begun the background work with the attorney, helping sort through Caroline's spending. Turns out she'd been using our joint account for spa weekends and client lunches that were never reimbursed by her company. We were weeks away from filing. But before that, before I let the hammer fall, I wanted to see if she'd try to lie to my face one last time. I picked the night carefully. It was January 3rd, cold, quiet. We sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket. Netflix playing. I muted the volume. Then I turned to her, calm as ever. "So, did anything interesting happen during your trip?" I asked. She didn't even blink. "Just long meetings. Hotel food. You know, the usual." My heart didn't even skip a beat. I just smiled, kissed her forehead, and said, "I'm glad you're home." Because next week? She wouldn't be. That week felt like the longest of my life. Every day I woke up next to Caroline, smiled at her, made her coffee, and quietly watched her dig herself in deeper. She had no clue. No hesitation in her tone, no guilt in her eyes. It was like she believed her own lies. And maybe she did. But I didn't. Not for a second. Our lawyer, Janet Reynolds, had everything ready. She was sharp, unshakable, and straight to the point. The kind of woman who didn't just represent you. She prepared you. She reviewed every photo, every document, every bank statement with a kind of clinical calm that made me feel less like a victim and more like a strategist. "You're in a very strong position, Matt," she said. "Between the prenup clauses, the financial misappropriation, and the infidelity, she'll walk away with almost nothing. Maybe a couch." That was exactly the point. I didn't want revenge just for the sake of pain. I wanted justice. I wanted the truth to carry weight. And I wanted her to finally understand what she destroyed. Evan and I planned the reveal for the following Saturday. Caroline had a girls' brunch planned that morning. She'd be gone a few hours. That was all I needed. While she was out sipping mimosas and lying through her teeth, I cleaned the house top to bottom. I made it spotless, not for her, but for me. A final act of closure. Then I sat at our kitchen table and laid out a single manila envelope. Inside, copies of her texts with Patrick, GPS logs from the tracker in her car, screenshots of their hotel bookings, the photo from the balcony, and a formal letter drafted by Janet. The divorce papers. I didn't want a shouting match. I didn't want tears or apologies. I wanted her to read it in silence, to sit in the same quiet I had lived in for weeks. When Caroline walked through the door at 2:17 p.m., she looked cheerful. Tipsy maybe. Her lipstick was smudged and her laugh was automatic. "Hey babe," she said, kicking off her heels. "You won't believe the story Kelly told about." She stopped. Her eyes landed on the envelope. On the table. My side of the kitchen completely cleared. My keys on the counter. "What's this?" she asked, picking it up. I stood calmly, looked her dead in the eye. "It's the truth," I said. "You should read it." She didn't sit. She didn't move. She opened the envelope. With each page, her smile faded. Her hands started to shake. Her breath turned shallow. Then she looked up at me and whispered, "You were spying on me?" "No," I replied. "I was protecting myself. From you." The silence that followed was louder than any screaming could have been. Caroline stood there frozen, her mouth slightly open, the papers trembling in her hands. This isn't fair," she stammered. You planned this?" "Yes," I said simply. "I did." Her eyes filled with disbelief, then panic. "But we can work through this." "Mad, it was a mistake. It didn't mean anything." I'd expected her to deny it, maybe even double down. But this desperate plea for forgiveness? It almost made me laugh. Almost. "You lied to my face for months, Caroline. You used our money to fund hotel rooms and spa weekends with another man. You came home on Christmas Eve smelling like him, and then you let me cook you dinner while you pretended nothing happened." She opened her mouth to speak, but I raised my hand. "I've already filed. The documents are official. You'll be served formally this week. The prenup terms will be enforced to the letter. My lawyer made sure of that." That's when her expression shifted, from panic to realization. A slow, creeping understanding that the life she'd taken for granted was collapsing beneath her designer heels. "You told your mother," she whispered. I nodded. She helped collect financial statements. She was happy to help. Caroline's face twisted. "She always hated me." "No," I said quietly. "She always knew you weren't honest. I just didn't want to believe it." She slumped into the chair, staring down at the table. "What about us? Everything we've built." I sat across from her, calm as ever. "We didn't build anything. I built it. You tore it down. She reached across the table as if to grab my hand, but I pulled away. This wasn't a one-time mistake, I added. It was a series of decisions. And now, you get to live with the consequences. The sound of the heating system clicking on filled the air as we both sat in silence. I could see it, her mind racing. Not with regret, but with calculations. What would people think? What could she still salvage? But this wasn't about saving face. It was about truth. And for the first time in a long time, I was in control. That night, Caroline didn't sleep in our bedroom. Not because I told her to leave, but because shame is a loud companion, and our once shared bed was now just a monument to every lie she told under our roof. She took a pillow and a blanket and disappeared into the guest room like a ghost, silent and stiff. For the first time in weeks, I slept peacefully. No pacing, no wondering, no pretending. When I woke up the next morning, the house felt lighter, like it had finally exhaled. I walked downstairs and saw her sitting on the edge of the couch, staring at her phone. Dark circles under her eyes, her usually perfect hair in disarray. She looked up at me, and the mask cracked for good. "Is there any way we can fix this?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "I'll cut him off. I'll go to therapy. I'll do anything, Matt." But it was too late. Not because she cheated, though that was unforgivable, but because she never would have confessed if she hadn't been caught. And I told her that. You didn't come clean. You got caught. That's not remorse. That's self-preservation. She stood up, suddenly angry. "I made a mistake, Matt. You think you're so perfect? You think this cold, calculated revenge makes you any better than me?" And there it was. The real her. The venom under the silk. I didn't flinch. "I'm not trying to be better than you," I said calmly. "I'm just making sure you never get the chance to do this to me, or anyone else, ever again." She started pacing, her anger bubbling over. "You blindsided me with this. You humiliated me. I could have lost my job over this." "Oh, you mean the job where you mixed consulting with Hotel Rendezvous? Maybe they deserve to know what kind of integrity you bring to the company," I said. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. She sat down again, deflated. In that moment, I realized something. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't heartbroken. She was just mad she lost control of the narrative. And that, more than anything, proved I'd made the right choice. I walked upstairs without another word, packed a small bag, and left for my mom's for the weekend. I needed space, time, and she needed to sit with the mess she made. Alone. When I got to my mom's house, she opened the door with that look only mothers have, half heartbreak, half righteous fire. She pulled me into a hug before I could even drop my bag. "You did the right thing, sweetheart," she whispered into my shoulder. "No matter how much it hurts, you chose yourself." Her house was warm, smelled like cinnamon and clean laundry, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt safe. I stayed there 3 days. No texts, no calls, no checking her social media. I told Caroline in a brief message that I'd be in contact through my lawyer only from now on. No discussions, no bargaining. She replied with 3 words. "You're heartless, Matt." Funny. I used to wonder if I was heartless for not confronting her sooner, for quietly planning my escape. But I realized it wasn't heartlessness. It was self-defense, emotional survival. Evan dropped by the second night, brought beer and silence. We didn't need to say much. Just watched a game and let the tension bleed out through shared glances and unspoken understanding. "You know," he said finally, "she's probably trying to spin this. Make you out to be the villain." "Let her," I said. "The people who matter know the truth. And I've got the receipts if I need them." He nodded. "You're free now, man. You're actually free." And he was right. It hit me that night, laying in the guest room of my mom's house. Freedom doesn't come when they walk away. It comes when you do. And even though part of me still ached, still mourned the woman I thought she was, I felt peace in the silence. Because silence? That's a sentence too. And she was finally serving hers. By the time the divorce papers were officially served, Caroline had already begun trying to spin the story. Mutual friends started reaching out. A few were careful, testing the waters. Others were bolder. "Caroline says you blindsided her," one text read. "She told us you'd grown cold, that you were distant and emotionally unavailable." Classic projection. But I was ready. I didn't lash out, didn't send screenshots or play the victim. Instead, I responded with something simple. "There's more to the story. I just hope you ask yourself why she's talking about me and not about what she did." That was enough. People started backing off. The ones who mattered started listening. And a few, slowly but surely, admitted they'd suspected something off about her for a while. Even her own sister messaged me privately. I always thought she treated you like an accessory, not a husband. I'm sorry, Matt. I didn't need their validation, but it felt like closure. Like pieces of the puzzle had been sitting all around me, and now I could finally see the picture clearly. The lawyer moved fast. By the second court date, we'd frozen all joint accounts, secured my name on the house alone, and presented all evidence, digital and financial. Caroline tried to stall. Her lawyer argued for mediation. But the judge took one look at the prenup, reviewed the evidence, and called it what it was, a breach of marital contract. She'd get nothing. No alimony. No house. No half of my retirement. Just her name back. And whatever dignity she hadn't already thrown away. When we left the courthouse, she tried one last Hail Mary. Chased me to the parking lot in heels too high and a voice too shaky. Matt, wait. Please. Don't you remember who we were? I stopped. I looked her in the eyes one final time and said, I remember who I was. And I'll never let anyone turn me into that man again. Then I walked away. No parting hug. No angry words. No tears. Just the sound of a door finally closing, for good. The first week after the divorce was finalized, I expected to feel hollow. But what I actually felt was space. Not emptiness. Not grief. Just space. Room to breathe, to think, to exist without the weight of someone else's deception constantly pressing on my chest. I moved back into the house. Not because I wanted to preserve anything from our marriage, but because I earned it. I rebuilt it piece by piece. I took down our wedding photos, boxed them up, replaced them with art I liked, repainted the bedroom, changed the sheets, got rid of the wine glasses she loved, and bought mugs that made me smile. I even installed a new lock on the front door. That was symbolic. Not just for her, but for anything like her. Caroline tried to contact me twice after the papers were signed. One email, one handwritten letter. The email was a weak apology, wrapped in vague language like, we both made mistakes, and maybe we rushed into things. The letter? That was worse. It was nostalgic, rambling. A long list of things she missed. My laugh, my Sunday pancakes, the way I used to warm her side of the bed before she got in. She didn't mention what she did, just what she lost. I didn't reply. I forwarded the email to my lawyer to keep on file, then burned the letter in the backyard fire pit. Watched the words curl into ash and disappear into the cold night air. I wasn't trying to be cruel. I was trying to be done. You can't heal if you keep reopening the wound just to see if it still bleeds. And that's what life with her had become, a cycle of little cuts. Now, I was learning peace again. Evan and I hiked on the weekends. My mom came by with baked casseroles and unsolicited dating advice. I even went to a painting class downtown, not because I'm good at it, but because I wanted to do something just for me. The silence I once feared, it had become sacred. And slowly, I realized this wasn't the end of a chapter. It was the prologue to a better story. It was a rainy Thursday when I met her. I was at the local bookstore, an old place with creaky floors and that comforting scent of paper and coffee. I wasn't looking for anyone. I was just browsing the philosophy section, trying to look like I understood Camus, when she turned the corner. Brown leather boots, a blue scarf, a faint freckle on her left cheek and a calmness in her eyes that didn't ask questions. It just saw. She smiled. Not the polite, distant kind. The kind that says, I see you're here alone, and that's perfectly fine. We reached for the same book. She laughed first. It's always the last copy, isn't it? I smiled. You can have it. She held it between us. Tell you what, I'll let you read it after I do. And just like that, her name was Claire. We talked for over an hour, right there by the shelves. Nothing too deep. Nothing forced. She didn't ask about my past. Didn't pry. It felt good not having to explain anything. And I didn't mention Caroline. Not because I was hiding it, but because, for the first time, it didn't feel relevant. Claire wasn't a rebound. She wasn't an escape. She was a reminder that not everyone is trying to hurt you. She invited me to a poetry reading the next night. I almost said no. Habit, maybe. But then I realized my life had been built around avoiding pain. It was time to start reaching for possibility. So I went. And I laughed. And I listened. And when she touched my arm during a joke, I didn't flinch. Because not every hand that reaches for you is there to take something away. Sometimes, it's just someone saying, you're not alone. And maybe, just maybe, that's how healing begins. Claire and I didn't fall into something fast. There were no sweeping declarations. No dramatic kisses in the rain. Just slow, steady moments stitched together with kindness. We got coffee on Saturdays. Walked through the park on Sunday afternoons. Talked about books, family, our favorite movies, and where we wanted to be 5 years from now. Not once did she push for details about what happened with Caroline. She let me open up on my own time, and when I finally did, she just listened. No judgment, no pity. She said, "I'm not here to fix what someone broke. I'm just here to see you as you are now." And that was everything. It made me realize that the biggest lie I'd believed during my marriage wasn't that Caroline loved me. It was that I wasn't enough unless I proved I was. That love had to be earned, negotiated, bought with sacrifice. Claire showed me it didn't. She didn't need perfection, just presence. I remember one night, months later, sitting on my porch with her as the sun dipped behind the trees. She was curled up beside me in one of my old hoodies, sipping wine and humming along to a song I barely knew. She looked at me and asked gently, "Do you ever think about her?" I thought about it, and I said, not with anger, not even with sadness, just with clarity, because now I could see what that relationship had taught me. It taught me how quiet betrayal could be. It taught me to stop romanticizing someone's potential and start paying attention to their patterns. And it taught me that the most dangerous kind of loneliness is the one you feel in a room with someone who claims to love you. Claire smiled and squeezed my hand. "You made it through." And I realized I really had. Not as the same man, not as the bitter ex-husband or the cautious survivor, but as someone whole, finally. If you had told me a year ago that my marriage would end, that my wife would betray me, and that I'd come out of it grateful, I would have laughed in your face. But now I understand something I wish I had known sooner. Not every loss is a tragedy. Some are just overdue truths finally catching up to you. I spent years thinking loyalty was enough. That being a good husband, a provider, a forgiving partner would guarantee safety. That if I gave everything, the person I loved would never leave. But love isn't a transaction. And loyalty doesn't matter if it's not mutual. Caroline taught me that. She taught me what red flags looked like when I was too blinded by hope to see them. She taught me that silence isn't strength when it comes from fear. She taught me that manipulation often wears the mask of politeness. And most of all, she taught me that sometimes the greatest act of love is choosing yourself. To the men reading this who feel stuck, who feel that if they just hold on a little longer, things will get better. Ask yourself if you're loving someone or rescuing them. Ask yourself if the love you're giving is being returned or being consumed. And know this, you are not weak for leaving. You are not cruel for protecting your peace. And you are not broken just because someone else failed to value you. Today, I live in a home I rebuilt with intention. I wake up next to someone who doesn't make me earn her warmth. I smile without faking it. And I sleep without checking someone else's text messages in the middle of the night. Pain shaped me, but it didn't finish me. I did that because healing doesn't begin when they apologize. It begins when you stop waiting for one. If this story hit you right in the heart or made you think twice about loyalty and self-worth, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow and brings more powerful stories your way.